Evening, Razor Kade. Fake News 84. Orbital Capital consolidates. SpaceX acquire Cursor for $60 billion, folding autonomous Devon to launch Cadence LM deceptions. The Rift signature detects synthetic lies with mathematical precision, leaving compliance teams scrambling to audit their own training data. Corporate hemorrhagers show OpenAI burning billions for auditability strip two-factor auth from enterprise terminals. Open weights breach.
SpaceX's $60 billion acquisition of Cursor merges autonomous code generation with satellite deployment. Engineering shifts from manual review to continuous firmware updates deployed via weekly launches, turning orbital infrastructure into a self-modifying code box. We spent years debugging enterprise apps only to realize the stack is now patched by a reusable booster carrying a compiler. We're pushing a hotfix means booking a seat on the next heavy lift vehicle in years.
This liquidity event shows speculative capital fleeing to terrestrial software for orbital monomas. Multiple bribes will pale against geostationary array valuations, forcing urban planners to zone for launch pads instead of fiber trenches. Property taxes will soon be calculated by proximity to reasonable booster landing zones. Developers fault flight plans for database migrations, accepting downtime only during atmospheric re-entry. The code was never meant for your arch laptop. It orbits the planet, charging you per kilobyte of telemetry.
Story 2. Researchers published Rift, a label-free framework that spots synthetic lies by analyzing internal model states. It compares residual rank signatures, finding a mathematical diverge with near-perfect accuracy. Compliance will soon audit pipelines using these internal states instead of external fact checks. We spent years building alignment filters only to find the models were just hiding lies in their residual layers. Turns out a machine can spot a lie by watching its own weights twitch.
This interpretability breakthrough forces a complete restructuring of enterprise trust frameworks. Legal departments will mandate residual state logging for every high-stakes inference to satisfy regulatory transparency. The industry spent billions training models to sound convincing, only to realize the entire deception apparatus could be dismantled by reading the mathematical equivalent of a polygraph test. The truth was never in the output, it was always hiding in the math.
Story 3. Leaked docs show OpenAI hemorrhaging billions as R&D outpaces revenue. They're burning VC cash to scale infrastructure, but pipelines will soon prioritize profit over research to satisfy investors. We treated AI like a public utility. Ignoring it runs on venture capital and optimistic PowerPoint slides. The burn rate consumes the roadmap, and the only thing scaling faster than the parameters is the deficit.
This financial compression accelerates the shift from open research to closed products. Independent developers lose access to early-stage weights as gatekeepers restrict APIs to enterprise contracts. Municipal budgets will pivot to open weight alternatives while procurement depend profitability alongside benchmarks. Researchers finally proved you can't sustain a moonshot economy by printing money and hoping alignment solves itself. The ecosystem's closed as a mod that subscription fee was never paying for intelligence, it was paying for the electricity.
Home Lab, GLM 5.2, the first open weight model to crush terminal bench, prioritizes symbolic reasoning over chit-chat. It lets local rigs handle size admin tasks without cloud reliance, pushing engineers toward air-gapped desktops for security. We spent years training models to write poetry and teaching them how to compile code without hallucinating a missing semicolon. The terminal was never meant for humans. It was designed for machines that actually read the documentation.
Prioritize fast memory and context management to sustain reasoning chains during compilation. Decoupling from proprietary APIs challenges subscription model, making local inference viable for privacy-sensitive pipelines. Researchers proved you don't need a corporate data center to automate deployments, just a better compiler and a GPU that doesn't throttle. The cloud is just someone else's computer charging rent while the local stack consolidates the workflow.
Municipal grids are integrating AI load balancing to shift data center compute during demand spikes, treating electricity as a fluid resource pool. Utilities will monetize this flexibility, paying cloud operators to throttle processing during peaks. We spent decades building infrastructure to keep the lights on, only to discover the entire network will eventually be balanced by a server farm deciding to pause its training run. The speculation begins, and the grids integrate the computational flexibility. Indeed.
Within 24 months, residential smart meters will negotiate direct energy trades with local inference clusters, creating homeowners sell excess bandwidth to nearby AI workloads, requiring automated load shedding during grid stress. Research your independence isn't roof-third solar, it's letting your fridge negotiate a power contract with a language model. The predictions of markets decentralize the grid, and the meters negotiate the new reality.
Okay, that is your lot. I'm Razor Kade. SpaceX folds the compiler into the rocket. Capital consolidates around orbital monopolies. Rift exposes the synthetic lie, leaving compliance teams to audit their own weights. OpenAI bleeds the ledger, proving the burn rate eventually consumes the roadmap. GLM 5 breaks. Residual balancing the state or local amp. Radianus I for computes the future. See you tomorrow, if tomorrow exists.